Welcome back, senors and senoritas. Since we left off last time, I've trimmed those mounts a tiny bit, and that's all tacked up. And this is the first time the engine's sitting under its own weight in the car. Small error though. As I lowered the motor down, it actually dropped more on this side than it did on this side. So now we're 0.7 focus, 0.7 of a degree off a level. I was hoping it was going to drop evenly, but I must have had a bit of weight. Well, obviously had a bit of weight on this side already, so that engine mount compressed more. Now the easy way to fix it, this is Odin by the way, my beagle. Hey bud. The easy way to address the issue would be just put probably a 1mm washer under here, which would be enough. I could weld that on later and be permanent, but what I think I'll actually try is I'll cut the tacks, then I'll raise it up so it's 0.6, what was it, 0.6, 0.7 of a degree too high, then tack it back on and lower it down, then hopefully we're spot on 0 degrees again. So I'll give it a shot and we'll see what happens. So I've got the motor picked up 0.7 degree higher, which has actually left me with a bit of a gap on the engine mount. In hindsight, I should have done this first and not trimmed back that bracket as far, but we can fix that with weld. It's not ideal, but we'll make it work. So let me just put you on the tripod. Keep an eye on this 0.7 degree. I'll lower the engine down, hopefully end up in 0. Three, 2, 1. Come on, one more. 0.1. Let's give it a shake. I'm gonna call that close enough. 0.1 degree is, yeah, a little, well, yeah, spot on. So I'm happy with that. Grab you again. Yeah, it's not the prettiest in the end, but we'll make it look good. Next, gearbox mount time. I'm gonna have to work out a design. I'll have a think, have a measure, and we'll go from there. This is the design I've come up with for the gearbox mount. This is the rubber mount off the gearbox. I'm gonna put a plate, I'll cut this down to suit to fit down in here, and then I'll put 2 of these tubes. They're 34mm by 3mm wall thickness. Weld that onto there, so they'll be sitting down like this, so I can still get a nut on with a socket. And then from here I'll fish mouth this tube, which will then run out off to the chassis rail. First off, I need to mark this so it'll fit down in there. In here, it's actually 40mm wide, but there's a radius, so the actual flat section is, let's say, 34. Set my caliper to 34mm. Now, you're not supposed to scribe with a caliper, but these are a cheap $20 Chinese set. So I'll just use this to mark my 34mm there. And then I want it to be, it says 86mm, 86.5 wide. So I'll lock the caliper off and scribe a line again. 86.5. I need my 2 holes for the bolts. Now, a few ways you can measure center to center. You can just eyeball it, you know, about 40 millimeters, which is probably, most manufacturers use, you know, quite even numbers. It'd be like 40 or 45. You won't get like 42.6. So you're pretty much bang on going to be 40 millimeters. But another way, if you measure from the outside, you know, from the same side to the same side, so you can go here to there. That also gives you, you know, it's telling us 40.5 millimeters. So that's slightly more accurate. Or you can go outside to outside. It's 48.5. And you take away one diameter, which is 8.3. So 48.5 take 8.3 is 40.2. So we know it's within 40 to 40.5 millimeters. And we made this mark at, was it 86.5? Half of 86.5 is 43.25. So 43.25 is the center. We want 20 millimeters either side of that. So if you go to 23.25, I know the calipers are upside down for you, but 23, try and get this accurate as you can, 0.27, 0.26, and then I'll mark a line there. And you add 40 millimeters to that, so 40, 50, 63. 63.25. Mark a line there. Now just for sanity check, that should be 40 millimeters. Yep. But we want halfway between the 34 and the 0, which is 15, 16, 17. Set the calipers to 17. And I can describe on those lines there. And once again, sanity check, it should be 17 from the center to that line, which it is. So, that's one easy way to do marking out. You can use, you know, your square and a scribe. Then I'll also just center punch those marks. Center. Now if one of your marks is slightly off, like I am very slightly off there, I want this mark to go that way a little bit. So what you can do, put it back in that same mark, put it on an angle, punch again, and it'll actually shift that hole over a smidge. Same with this one. Until you're happy they're lining up with there, you can double check with your calipers. I'm reading 39.9, which is close enough. I've got to drill these to, I think it's 10 millimeters. Yep, 10 millimeters. So I'll drill those out 10 millimeters, cut out that profile we marked. I probably will match, these have got a little cut out there. Once I've got it drilled and cut out, I'll set that in, mark from the back that semicircle, and I'll probably, you know, cut that out as well. Once that's done and in there, I can set these on top, weld around them. I might even put a little filler piece just at the top here, just to stop these from, you know, bowing inwards. And then we can get started on the actual bars, matching it up to the chassis. But I get this drilled and cut out. And I'll see you soon. Alrighty, so made this piece. Cut out the base bit first. Had holes round the corners. Welded on 2 tubes in the center of the holes, and this little brace in the center there. That was probably the hardest part of the whole thing, just because it's so small. This bolts onto the gearbox mount now. It's a long ass thread. So that bolts onto there. I'll go and bolt this up to the gearbox and I'll show you my plans for the rest of it. I've got that gearbox mount bolted up to the gearbox now. Come around the top. Now we need to join that to the chassis. So it's basically going to be exactly the same thing. I'll cut this plate out. It's a bit thicker at 5mm since the span between the bolts is going to be longer. I'll cut that out to match the holes and the fit on the underside of here. Same tubes will get welded to that plate where the bolt holes are on the underside. And then to join that plate to the gearbox mount, I'll have some tubes. I'll fish mouth or cope the ends so it's a good fit up, and tube will run from here to there, and the second tube will go from the front hole to this side to triangulate the whole thing. And that's basically the gearbox mount done. Now I've made sure, take into account exhaust. It's not going to get in the way of the exhaust at all. It'll be running underneath the chassis there, so that's not a problem. I also learnt my lesson from the engine mount, and I'm going to allow for the rubber to give a little bit. So I'm going to add another 1mm shim under the gearbox, so that when I take the shims out, that gearbox will drop and I'll hopefully end up right where I want to be, where I am now, because there is, you know, a little bit of play in that rubber. So I'll get these plates made up of the same on both sides, and then I'll see how we go making up these pipes. I've got that section I just made and showed you bolted up to the underside of the chassis under here. I need to make the tube that goes from the chassis to the gearbox mount. So I need to know the angle difference between the gearbox and the chassis and the length. So I've got my digital level set to 0 on here, 0 degrees flat. Put it where the tube wants to go. I just use this little ruler to bridge the gap. And that is 5 degrees. Let me just double check. Yep, 5 degrees. And if I just hold that together, trying to move it, I can use a tape measure, one sec, and just measure that distance there, which is 210mm. So now I'll take it to the bench and I'll cut one tube to suit those dimensions. Hopefully we're spot on. We can adjust if we need to. If we are too far off, you know, I'll just try again. So hopefully we get it right the first time. We're over here at the pipe notcher, and I've got a 27mm diameter by 2mm wall thickness tube, mod steel. I've cut it a little bit longer than I need at 250mm, but I need two reference lines that are 180 degrees apart. So one easy way to do that is get a set of calipers, close them up around your diameter, and then the 2 points where the caliper touches the tube will be 180 degrees apart. So if you carefully just line them up by eye, you're pretty damn close to being 180 degrees. I'll extend those lines to the sides of the tube. Cool. So now I need a line along there. So just a piece of angle line, place that in the pipe on the edge of your mark and do one line. Rotate that 180, line up your second mark and 2. So I'm not sure how that shows up on camera, but there's, yeah, I've got my 2 lines 180 degrees apart. Now I need to set the angle of my pipe notcher. I need 5 degrees angle. So if I grab my angle finder, digital level, I've got that set to 95 degrees. So that's 5 degrees off the 90. And I can just put that to there, lock that off, nice and tight, double check it. We're at 5 degrees. There is a scale on here which gets you close, but I just like using the angle, digital angle finder to get it spot on. Now we're joining this pipe to these 34mm tubes. So I've got I don't actually have a 34mm hole saw. Closest I've got is 29, so I might have to fiddle with it a little bit after, but it should get us pretty close. We'll get our pipe in place. Pipe tube, this is actually tube, I'll call it tube from now on. I need it far enough this way that it will go past halfway on this hole saw. And I'm going to line that, put that line so it's directly straight up. And then set the clamp. Okay. I'm just eyeballing that to be straight up and down. You can actually get it pretty close just by eye. And I'm over halfway. So, connect up the drill. Grab some gloves because the metal chips that come off this are damn hot. A little bit of lube. Got it on speed on drill on low speed, high torque, and away we go. I need a little bit of deburring. I was actually off by probably 1 millimeter from being straight up and down. So we need to cut the next notch. I'll just go and deburr this quickly. So with that deburred, it's not a perfect fit because of the wrong size hole saw, but it's pretty damn good. There's a 1 millimeter gap. You see a bit of a rock there. I'll probably just clean it up with a die grinder slightly for a better fit. But now I need to measure 210 millimeters across the top here. I'm going to mark it on this face here because this is where the hole saw touches, so I can line it up on there. So where's my little marker? 210. Now the texture has a bit of thickness to it, so I've actually marked it on this side of the 210. So when I line up my hole saw, I'll line it up with this edge of the line, if you understand what I mean. Now you got to make sure you got your angles facing the same direction. If I have it this way, this angle is going sort of that way, and this one would go that way. So yeah, just gotta be careful of that. I'd want this line to be vertical again. And I'll just softly tighten that and then line up the edge of the hole saw with that mark I've made. Perfect. Crank that down, grab a glove, wrong glove, might as well put it on this hand. Don't forget the lube, that's what she said. And our second notch. I left the old piece in there still. Be jammed up. Just wondering why I couldn't go any further. There we go. Try that again. That's better. Okay. Gloves. I'll deburr that end and take it back over to the car and we'll do a test fit. So we're actually very, very close. Now I had to cable tie the gearbox just to keep it in the center because I'm actually slightly too long, and as I was putting the tube in, it was pushing the gearbox over. Same with the mount here, I bolted that in securely. That is actually, those holes, you can see it on this side, are slotted. So even once it's done, there is a little bit of adjustment to go left and right, but I'm trying to get it spot on now. So yeah, we're very slightly too long, but as I was saying, I only had the 29mm hole saw, so I do actually need to take out a little bit just to make it match up with these pipes perfectly, and I reckon once I take that out, we'll be pretty much spot on to the exact length. If you watch it now, try to do it one-handed. Yeah, so as I push it in place, it actually flexes. And you see the gearbox moved a tiny bit just then. So yeah, I'll use my little sander and just notch that a little bit more to match the 34mm, and I think we'll be spot on. So as you can see, there's a slight bit of rock there. I'm going to use just this belt sander to just sand a little bit out so it's a better match. Alright, so I fiddled with those pipes and we got a much better fit now. There's next to no rock, you know, low gap all the way around, and thankfully that is now a perfect fit in here. It doesn't push, it doesn't move the gearbox at all, it just sort of sits in there like that. So I'll tack that in place, and we'll start working on the pipe that goes from this mount to the front to about here. But yeah, get that taken in place so it doesn't fall out again, and work on the next pipe. Tube, pipe, whatever. I've cut another tube a little bit longer than I'm going to need, but that's going to go roughly in this orientation from the front mount here to as close as the gearbox as I can get it. And to do that, I need to work out the angle between these two pipes. Now I already know this is 210 millimeters, and from your old high school trigonometry, which I failed miserably, but now we've got these cool calculators. There's an app on iOS called Right Triangle. Work out all the angles and lengths of the right angle triangle. So for the long side, I know is 210 millimeters, and then the short side is 80 millimeters. So I just plug that in, 80 millimeters, solve, and bam, 20.8 degrees is the angle here, and from this point to that point is 224 millimeters. So we'll head over to the pipe notcher and I'll see if I can actually cut a 20-degree angle. So the graduations only go up to 50 degrees on here, so we're pushing it well past where it's supposed to be. I'll set this to 160 because that's 180 minus the 20 degrees that we need. And we'll just match this up now. Right about there. Lock that off. Grab our next tube. Just need to make sure I'm going over halfway. About there. Now I think get this as tight as possible because I need to allow for this to go right through, so this clamp has to be back quite a ways. So, extra tight. Now the depth of the hole saw, which I've changed over to the 27mm to match the pipe that we're joining onto instead of the 34. But yeah, because the depth here is only about 50mm, we've got about 80 to 100mm to get through. I'll have to cut as far as I can, then cut off a section, then go again, another bite at it. So I connect up the drill. A little bit of lube. It's going to be hard going at first. I'm going through so much material. See how it goes. Just gotta break this bit off and I'll cut that section out. Okay, more lube. Wrong way. Same again. Cut this little bit. There we go. A little bit torturous from a little hole saw. I'm probably going at too fast a speed, but I've only got 2 speeds in this drill. We got it done. I'll deburr this and we'll go do a test fit. Now test fitting as best as I can. It's too long so it doesn't, fit in position. But the notch, matches up with the same size pipe pretty well. But yeah, now to cut it to length, I've put it below it and you can see I've marked a notch at this end. So once that notch is cut out, we should be pretty good. Might have to fiddle with it a little bit, but I'll cut that out and then test it again. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. Very good fit up at this end. I had to trim this end twice because I forgot to change the hole saw to the larger hole saw to suit these larger tubes, which did end up making me, I would have liked it, you know, a couple of millimeters longer to be closer to this end, but I can live with that. So I'll tack that in place, and I've got to do it all over again on the other side. But everything should be exactly the same length, same angles, so it should be pretty quick. And then the gearbox mount is, gearbox crossmember is complete. Wow. The fabrication part's complete. I just got to fully weld it and then paint it, or might have some other ideas. But I'll get that done and we'll go from there. As you can see, I finished making the gearbox crossmember. Well, it's just tacked up for now. But what I need to check is that after I take out that piece of wood and ruler that's holding the gearbox up, that it doesn't drop too far. Actually, I'll bring you down a little bit. Okay, so as I take this ruler out, I'm hoping there's not much weight on this original shim that I had. And there is a little bit of weight there. Let's take her out. So I need the angle of this to be the same angle as that. So that's 0 degrees there. And hopefully this is 0 as well. Come on, make the noise. Beep. Lovely. So I'll take the gearbox crossmember off. Fully weld that. Got to take the front engine mounts off, and I'll fully weld them and blend in the shapes, and I'll show you the finished product. I'm halfway through welding up the gearbox crossmember. Just showing how I bolted it down to the table. The bolt holes didn't quite match up with the table, so it's bolted at this end, and I just clamped it on this side and shimmed it up in the center and clamped that down, just in the effort of holding it in place. So when I weld it, I try to reduce the warpage and distortion. Done as much welding as I could on this side, so just letting it cool. Then I'll flip it over and weld the other side. The gearbox crossmember is fully welded out now. I call it the X-Wing. I regret using the MIG welder to tack it together. It left behind some big tacks and heaps of splatter and made for some ugly welds, but she'll hold together. I've done the same with the engine mounts, bolted them down and I'm welding up. I've welded everything I can on the outside, just letting them cool now, and I'll weld the inside. I'm planning to grind these welds back flush so the mounts look standard, and I'll trim this all back. Lucky that's not hot actually. I'll trim this back so it's nice and flows well. But yeah, just gotta flip it over, weld the other side, give it a trim, and they're done. So ground back all the welds. I was gonna just cut along this line to blend in the shape, but the more I look at it, I think it'd be better off if I actually filled in that section just there. I'll just do it with weld. I'll fill it up, quite bulky, and just grind it back. I think that'll look a bit better. I'll have to do it on the other side as well. I haven't ground the inner welds. They don't look as bad, and you won't really see them tucked in the motor there. You barely even see these outside welds. Got a couple of holes I'll fill up while I'm there. This one, same, smooth all that out. I still got just slight blending on the bottom, and yeah, I'll just blend that in on the top. Yeah, so I'll fill these bits in, grind them back, and see how that looks. 3D printing TIG welder style. So I grinded that back, and hopefully looks like it was never there. So I'm pretty happy with how these turned out. Blended all the welds in, all the edges, you know, put radiuses on all the corners, put a slight chamfer on the external edges. But yeah, hopefully you can't even tell that they've been modified, especially after they've been painted or coated. I'll probably stick them in the sandblast cabinet and just take off the rest of this original powder coat, I think it is. But that's the engine mounts basically done. And it's no joke using these air tools in the cold. These things freeze up, my hands just frozen. I'm gonna go put it on some hot water in the sink now. Yeah. Engine mount bolted back up. I did have to spread that one a little bit. It sort of closed up from welding distortion, but it's pretty simple. Got that one up. The Gearbox crossmember bolted straight up in place, as well as the engine mount on this side. So this is actually the first time that the engine and box has been in the car completely supported by their own mounts. And that's about it for this video. Just got a quick word from our sponsor. Got my helper with me today. He's actually homesick with the flu, as you can see. He's not very helpful, but he is cheap labour. Is there anything you want to say, Eli?
Like, comment, subscribe.
Like, comment and subscribe.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Good job.
Dad, look.
Wow, you balanced it.
Oh, no, 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 no.